Okay, I'm gonna film now. Okay, lay down. Hi, readers. It's Lori and Winifred. Welcome back to our channel, Books, Ink, and Paper, and welcome to my reading wrap up for the month of February. I read 6 books in the month of February. I will say this is an interesting issue that's never come up before, but there is one book that I read that keeps coming back into and back out of my list of books I read in Goodreads. Something is going on with Goodreads, and I don't know what it is, but I'm not pleased with it. So the other day it was back, and then today I looked and it was not. But I did read 6 books in the month of February, and Storygraph has them correctly listed. So that's where I'm going to go for my stats. Anyway, not a bad reading month for me, about average. One of them was a novella, so that one was kind of, not a cheat necessarily, but an easy one to slip in there. But I really did enjoy the reading that I had in the month of February, and I look forward to maybe a little bit more in March. We'll just see. Work, life, sickness, all those things get in the way for sure. So the 6 books that I read contained 1,854 pages. Most of them were fairly short or average sized, I guess. My average time to finish these was 9 days, but I think that was really enhanced by the fact that I stopped on the one that's not showing up on Goodreads for a bit longer than I planned to. So there's that. I had an audio, a physical, and a Kindle at the same time, and I was really struggling to make progress significantly on the audio. I don't know why, but that one just snuck back into the back of the list. The moods of these books were primarily mysterious. Also, some emotional, very emotional reads that I had this time. One in particular, one of them was funny, some adventurousness, but not as much as usual, maybe. And yeah, just it was a good mix. There was some tension, there was some excitement, there was some hilarity. I had medium paced reading 60% of the time this time. My fast paced readings were 40%, which isn't too bad. That's pretty close to even. And the books that I read that were under 300 pages was 33% of them. And then the others were between 300 and 499. So I didn't have any super big ones, but there were some big ones, and they were all fiction. I did not deviate into nonfiction this month. And one of the reasons I haven't read my nonfiction pick that you chose for me yet is because my library didn't have it available to me until I picked it up Monday. So there you go. But I do have that now and plan to read that in the month of March. So thrillery, mostly a little bit of literary, historical, contemporary, some LGBTQ plus IA themes. One is a short story, and that one also is a bit of a romance. So I'm pleased that I read a romance this month. So I'm staying on the romance bandwagon so far, happily. Most of them were print, 67% I read in print, and then digital about 33%. Again, I'm reading my Kindle every day, so my streak is still going on, but I don't always read a ton of my Kindle each day. It really just depends on what book I'm reading in the moment, so that's important to know. So my average rating was 4.08. I had one 5-star read, four 4-star reads, and then one that was 3.5. So not bad. It was a pretty good bookish month for sure. Now let's talk about each one of those books one by one in the order in which I read them. All right, so The Safe Keep by Yael Vanderwooden is a book that was recommended to me on a podcast from Meredith at the Currently Reading podcast. I think it was in the Patreon, but I'm not sure. It was one or the other. She was talking about her top books of 2024, and this was one of them. And I had never heard of Yael Vanderwooden. This is her debut novel, so that makes sense. And I had never heard of this book. And so I was really intrigued by it, and she talked so fondly of it that I thought, yeah, I need to get this. And I found it at my library. I was so delighted by this book. Just can't tell you. It was such a surprise. In fact, I will sort of spoil something that I might talk about soon, which is this one made it to the long list of the Women's Prize for Fiction. So I'm really happy that this debut author made this journey so quickly in her writing career. She is phenomenal. The family, that backstory of this particular novel is the family were Jewish and they were incarcerated in camps years before this book takes place. And the children, two boys and one girl, have inherited their home, but Isabel, the girl, lives in it. She hasn't really inherited it because it's 1961 and she doesn't really get gifted property by her brothers. However, she lives there. She has someone that comes and helps and cleans, her house, and she lives a very isolated life. And they kind of carry on with their own lives, and the things that are happening with them are revealed in the novel. So there's a bit of story about both of them, but primarily this book is about Isabel and about the girlfriend of one of her brothers, whose name is Eva. Eva is introduced to Isabel early on in the book. They go out to dinner to meet her brother's new girlfriend, and she's not impressed. Isabel is not loving this woman at all, doesn't want anything to do with her, feels this just like repulsive sense about her, just thinks this is the worst choice he could have made. But things unfold from there because her brother asks if Eva can stay in the house with Isabel while he goes off to do some sort of work project that he can't take her on. And Isabel very, very vehemently states that she does not want this woman in her house, but he perseveres and essentially, probably, if I remember right, uses the "this is not really your house" card. And so Eva moves in, and Eva and Isabel could not be more different. And that is really part of the problem. Isabel is quiet, shy, she's regimented, she knows exactly what she wants, when, and how. She's just not an easy person to live with. And Eva is gregarious and talkative and wants to be friends and she wants to help. And it's just quite a mismatch. What unfolds was very surprising to me. I do not want to spoil any of it, but I will tell you that this book is deftly written. It is literary fiction, historically set. It is harsh at times. You like Isabel, but there's not a lot of things about Isabel that are likable at times. You like Eva, you are sort of wondering what's going to happen. Is that going to happen? Is that a possibility? Also, Isabel's brother is in a relationship with a man, and so they come and visit now and again, and so they have a larger role to play than the role of the brother who's off, and left Eva with Isabel. But oh my gosh, this was just a remarkably beautiful book, and I would read it again and probably will curate it to add it to my shelves. 5 stars for sure. Then I read Kills Well with Others by Deanna Rayburn. This actually just came out yesterday. Release date was yesterday. This was the second in her series, and I was graciously gifted an ARC of this through NetGalley, but from the publisher. I was actually asked if I wanted to read it, and I said sure, I would do that. And because this is book 2, I don't want to tell you a whole lot about this, but the setup for this is in the synopsis. This is about a group of women, I think there are 4 of them, who are assassins and were hired years and years and years ago to execute these assassinations with people who were doing nefarious things to good-hearted people. And this group of women are now older. They are transitioning into their golden years, I guess you would say. And they have just come off of book 1, where they had something that occurred that required them to respond. And now they're coming into, again, kind of a relationship with the company that had originally hired them to and trained them to do this, to kind of take care of some things that are still happening and going on. What I love about these books, I will just say, they're well plotted. There's definitely a plot that is that carries you through. It's pretty even, I would say. There are a few moments where I was thinking, oh, this is, kind of evened out a little bit and then it surged again. But for the most part, they're pretty propulsive. This is the one that I gave 3.5 stars to. I think maybe in this case, the first book gives you a lot of backstory about how they were trained and where their roots were in the jobs that they were assigned to. In this case, they did a good bit of that again too, but I found it to be not as necessary. There were a couple of backstory things that occurred that I really wanted to know about, and one of them was written very, very beautifully, I have to say, and it's not for everybody, but it is a solution that this particular person chose. But I would say that I didn't necessarily need their backstory as much as I did in the first book. So that was the reason why I was kind of getting a little bit bogged down now and again because they just kept going back. But this one is propulsive. It is set in great places that you would never have thought to go. I will say that these books, and this one in particular, is slightly more violent than the one before. These are not like cozies at all, and there's a lot of blood and gore and guts. So if that isn't your thing, this may not be the book series for you. But I did enjoy this. I probably would read book 3 if there is a book 3. I have no idea if that's happening, but this one was really quite entertaining. And it's kind of good for me now and again to read a book about women of a certain age like myself. So I kind of appreciate these characters. And there's a male character in it too that I really like. I really, really like him. In fact, I kind of want more of him in many cases than I want of the women, but there you go. They're funny. They say really snippy but also hilarious things, and I just really like them a lot. The Wedding People, my book of the month club pick. This one has been one that I wanted to start for several months. I decided to wait until the new year, and it is Alison Espach's, not her first novel. She's written several novels before this. She's written The Adults and Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance, which was got some good acclaim. She has some short stories and some other things. And she lives and works in Rhode Island, which is where this book is set. This book is about a woman named Phoebe who has had a difficult thing occur to her in her life, and she's taken a room at this particular resort in Rhode Island to come to terms with her life and what has happened to her, and maybe make a choice that is difficult for a lot of people to understand. So I'm going to say this, there's some sensitivity warnings to the decision to end one's life or to stay alive. I'm just going to say that. I did, though, think that this was going to be very depressing throughout, and it absolutely was not. In fact, I listened to someone reviewing this at the end of last year as well, and she said this was one of those books that starts dark and then turns its way up into the sunshine. And I would say that that is definitely true. So I want you to be at ease with maybe a little bit of a rocky start and then moving towards sunshine. But Phoebe is the only person that is at this resort that isn't a part of this wedding party for this very self-absorbed bride who's been like taking care of all these arrangements, and it's this fancy thing where all these things happen, and these people are at this resort for like a week, it feels like, doing all these fancy things for this bride and this groom. I would say for me, the bride was not particularly likable at many, many times, but she didn't bother me so much that I couldn't enjoy the book. Let's just say that. Her fiance was very likable, and Phoebe, while she had some rocky emotional stuff, I really enjoyed Phoebe a lot. There's a lot of bookish things woven through because Phoebe works at a university, and I think what she teaches is romance literature or something like that, from the past. So I really enjoyed the setup of these characters. The setup of this book is essentially that the bride is really upset because she doesn't know who Phoebe is. Phoebe has no reason to be there. All these rooms were supposed to be let to bride, family, friends, and, participants and groom, I guess. And she was just so upset by the fact that Phoebe was coming in here with this dark, kind of feel around her, and she didn't want her to ruin her wedding. So they start to confide in each other, and this relationship grows in a really weird way. Phoebe's much older than this girl, as is the girl's fiance, actually. The bride is very, very self-absorbed. And so you definitely get a great sense of character development. The plot it moves, so it's not like it was slow for sure. Thanks, Win, for joining us yet again. The plot moves forward. It just is not necessarily anything beyond what you would expect for a book that's set in a couple of days around a specific event that they are planning for. So let's just say that. But there, you meet a lot of characters. You meet a lot of people in this family. Many of them were really funny. Some of the things that happened were surprising. So I won't say that I loved it. I liked it a lot, and I gave this one 4 stars. So the next one is Going Zero. This is the one that will not show up in my Goodreads list of books I read consistently. Written by Anthony McCarten, who is an Academy Award nominated screenwriter. So he is definitely no slouch. And this is a thriller that he wrote about a project where this company aligns with the United States government to look at a tool that would track people, and that they would be able to find them and, of course, incarcerate them. So Going Zero is a project whereby they pick, I think it was 10 people, and those 10 people, if they're able to completely eliminate themselves from the grid and from being able to be found, both in digital, social media, any way you can imagine, physically found, all of those things they have to eliminate and essentially go zero with tech so that they can hopefully be undetected for a period of how many days? They have 30 days to evade detection. And there are some capture terms that are put in place. So there's some things that, if this happens, then you've lost. I really liked this book. So there were two sort of things that you were following. You were following the people that were trying to stay hidden, and you were also following the people that were on this project, and in particular, this one kind of leader of the project and the girl that assists him. And so they're really, this plot is quite interesting. And it really does explore how much of what we do on our phones or in conversations with people, or how much we depend on technology. So this book really is delightfully plotted and really examines our relationship to technology and how much of our information is already shared and out there. It is a very frightening time to be thinking about this, and maybe it's frightening to be reading this book, but I really found it to be entertaining. I'm so glad that I picked it up. This was recommended to me by Lindsay at Lindsay's Little Library. When she read it, I heard her talking about it, and I've never forgotten it since then, and I had it on Libro.fm for a while and didn't get to it. So this was a backlist read for me as well. And she found out about it from Amanda at middle on the middle shelf. I was just going to say Curly Reader, but she's no longer Curly Reader. She's on the middle shelf. But she at first told her about it. So I don't hear people talking about this book a lot, but I would say I highly recommend this one. It was definitely a solid 4-star read for me. I don't really know what would have made it a 5. At the time, I was pretty solid with the 4, but it was really good. So maybe it was more of a 4.5. I don't know. I'll have to think about that a little bit. I also read Symphony of Secrets by Brendan Slocum. This was a complete Kindle digital read for me, and I had been wanting to read this as well for a while. It was on my backlist. Look at me going with my backlist. I had read The Violin Conspiracy for another Mardi Gras readathon, so I wanted to get to this one for this year's Mardi Gras readathon. This is a book about music. It fulfills that prompt. And I really liked this one too. It was much more, I would say, to me, it was much more riveting and dramatic than The Violin Conspiracy was, even though The Violin Conspiracy had a plot that was, you know, thrillery, propulsive. But in this case, this one I thought was a little bit more so. So let me make sure I get these names right. So this organization that has created a foundation called the Delaney Foundation, and the foundation is built around this composer whose name was, I think, Frederick Delaney. Was it Frederick? Something with an F. Fred. Yes. Wow, look at me. So it goes back and forth from the Fred Delaney story and to the Byrne modern day story. So Fred Delaney has written, composed a number of beautiful pieces, and Byrne is really like enamored with this guy. Byrne actually received a scholarship to the Delaney Institute because, or foundation, because of his love of this particular composer. And then he discovers some information as he's there at the foundation and he's trying to complete this project that they've asked him to complete. So he starts to investigate whether Fred Delaney actually wrote the pieces of music and symphonies that he allegedly says that he wrote. And he discovers that he had a relationship with a young woman named Josephine Reed, a Black woman who had a very interesting approach to writing music. So Josephine had a gift. She was a prodigy for composing and writing music and hearing it in a way that nobody else did. So she is sort of described as being neurodivergent in many, many ways. And she also has difficulty making human connections with people. But Fred actually is really connected to her at first and sees the value of the work that she does and of her talents. And what happens next, I do not want to say, except to say that it is pretty propulsive. I did feel like I was steady on enjoying it the entire time. I liked this one more than I liked The Violin Conspiracy for sure. There's another character that Byrne introduces us to, and she helps him to figure out what exactly happened. And did Fred Delaney write these pieces or did he not? And what happened to him during that time. It was quite fascinating and sometimes difficult to read, but I really enjoyed it and I really recommend it for sure. I would read something else by Brendan Slocum. Brendan Slocum is a composer himself and a musician, and so he has always written these books in a very realistic, very detailed way that I appreciate as well. And then the last one I read is actually a novella called The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez. This one was a Amazon First Reads add-on. You know, if you are a Amazon Prime subscriber, you're able to get a selection of 5 reads at the beginning of every month, and then you get to choose one before it comes out if you'd like to do that. And I ended up choosing the add-on, The Fall Risk, because I had recently read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez last year, and I enjoyed it a lot. I was really surprised by how much I loved that romance novel, that I didn't used to read. I gave this one 4 stars as well. It's a little under 100 pages, so definitely a novella or short story. I knew that going in, and I just really wanted to hear or to read what this was about, and I got it on ebook. I don't know if it's available as audio or not, but this one actually was published and released on March 1st, so it is available to you if you want to read it now. I will say this one also has some warnings to it, so there's some sensitivity to stalking, and this woman that is the main character in this book is really trying to also be sort of lost in this new place, in this apartment that she has chosen to live in. And one day she and her neighbor are coming out of the door fairly simultaneously, and they discover that the stairs that lead up to their apartment floor have crumbled and they can't get out of their apartment in that moment. And so it goes from there. I don't want to say a whole lot about this, except I really liked all of these characters. I really liked the way that they developed through Abby Jimenez's storytelling. It was realistic for patterns of people who have been stalked. It had a sort of a dark and a lighthearted plot, obviously working at the same time throughout, but neither of them really dwarfed the other, if that makes sense. You sort of had an equal concern about what was possible for her to be able to do as a result of this person having done some things to her before, and she's worried that he may come back and do them again. It's easy for you to understand that. And also it's lovely for you to see these other people in the story kind of support her through this and take care of her and make sure that she is safe and that she has some fun. And so there is some fun in it for sure. And again, I think that was equally distributed throughout. And I'm really a big Abby Jimenez fan. I hope I never regret saying this to anyone, and I don't think I will, but I definitely want to get to these other couple that I have of hers because I think she does really a great job of exploring not just the beautiful candy kind of coding that can be on some romances, but really gets down to the character development and the realistic experiences that people have in their lives, especially when they are coming out of something that makes them not have trust. So I don't know if all of her books are about this sort of movement from no trust to more trust, or if this is just the two that I've read, but I really liked this one. And again, I recommended it. I gave it 4 stars. This was my challenge. The Safe Keep I had to finish because I had already started it in January and it had to go back to my library. So if I were to put that in a category for the Mardi Gras Readathon, it would be about a group of friends, although they were actually family. That one is a little bit tricky because it wasn't something that I had chosen to read for the Mardi Gras Readathon, but it did fulfill that prompt. So did the Kills Well with Others novel. Group of friends, they are definitely connected, have been for a very, very long time. The Wedding People, it fulfilled the prompt of being about a ball or an elegant event because it was about a wedding. So that one made me feel a little bit better. Symphony of Secrets is fulfilled the prompt of read a book about music, which I definitely can tell you is quite detailed and extensive about music, especially in that time period. And The Fall Risk, I don't know that The Fall Risk really, I mean, it is about a group of friends, but I've used that one already before. The Fall Risk, it was just a fun add-on. And those of you may remember our group read for the Mardi Gras Readathon was Bayou Book Thief. I did finish that. I'm going to talk about that in March because I actually didn't finish it until the 1st of March, which I'm always very honest about. I don't want you to think that I'm, trying to get one past you. But that one fulfilled pretty much every prompt in the Mardi Gras Readathon. So if you read that, you definitely can say that you succeeded. And I did read that. So I'm going to talk about that next month, but it was really, really fun and I enjoyed it. So this month I'm focusing on a lot of thrillers, mysteries, and some middle grade reading and enjoying this very, very much. I can't wait to tell you about that soon too. But I'm ready for this month to be slow. I don't know about you, but I feel like everything has just flown by, and I don't know what happened to the first 2 months of the year. And it's probably because I was in a bit of a malaise when I was not feeling well, and some other people in my life were not feeling well as well. But I need this month to slow down, and I'm trying to figure out ways to make that happen. So let me know if you read any of these books. Let me know what you read for Mardi Gras Readathon if you have those finished and you want to tell me about them. Let me know if you follow these authors, read anything else by them, whether or not you found it to be as good as I did, or whether you found it to be even better than I did. I'm sure there are titles by some of these authors that I haven't even discovered yet. And I can't wait to hear more about your reading month in the month of February. So in the comments below, tell me everything I need to know and want to know about your reading month. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being my community, my bookish family and friends. And as always, happy reading. Bye.